How did you get your mom to apologize for being too strict? After the divorce, my mom turned our house into a war zone. No contact with dad, no exceptions, no matter what. She blocked his number on my phone, shredded any mail with his handwriting before I could see it, told the school office to call the cops if he showed up. Every day at lunch, I'd sit with kids scheduling their dad weekends while I pretended mine was just really busy with work. They'd complain about having 2 houses, 2 sets of rules, double the chores. I wanted to throw my sandwich at them. Like, at least they had 2 houses. Then came my 14th birthday. I got a letter in the mail and recognized Dad's messy handwriting immediately. Happy 14th birthday, Isabella. I hope you still like chocolate cake. I didn't have time to read the rest, because Mom snatched it from my hands and tore it into pieces right in front of me. Nothing from him enters this house. Her face was twisted with so much hate it scared me. That's when Grandma, on my mom's side, stepped in. During her weekly visits, she'd casually mention things about Dad. He moved closer to us, only 20 minutes away now. He asks about you constantly. Still has that photo of you at the beach on his desk. One day, she grabbed my hand and made me repeat his phone number over and over until I had it memorized. Just in case, she whispered. I started testing boundaries in small ways. Changed my profile picture on Instagram to a photo of me and Dad just to see if Mom would notice. She didn't, so I got bolder. I made a fake email account and sent Dad a message. It's me, I'm okay, Mom doesn't know. He responded in 12 seconds, like he'd been waiting by his computer for 2 years. I was too nervous to respond. The closest I came to full rebellion was at Mia's sleepover. Everyone was passed out from too much pizza. I didn't just stare at Dad's number. I called it and heard his voice for the first time in years. Hello? My throat closed up. I couldn't speak. Hello? Is someone there? 10 seconds of silence. Then quietly, Isabella? Baby, is that you? I hung up and sobbed into the pillow until I threw up. He knew. Somehow he knew it was me. Then everything changed on a random Wednesday in March. I was in history class when the principal's assistant pulled me out. There's been an accident, she said, and her voice cracked. Your mom's car was hit by a drunk driver. She's at the hospital. The drive there felt like hours. I kept thinking about our fight that morning. How the last thing I'd said to her was, I hate you. When I got to the emergency room, a doctor was waiting for me. His scrubs had blood on them. Your mother has internal bleeding. We have a 15-minute window to get her into surgery or she won't make it. We need consent from an authorized adult now. I called Grandma 17 times. No answer. Book club. Of course. Each ring felt like a year of my life. That's when I remembered the number hidden in my phone case. My fingers trembled as I peeled back the rubber and saw those 10 digits. Within 20 minutes, Dad burst through the hospital doors looking panicked. The nurse's face flooded with relief. Mr. Smith? You're still listed as next of kin on her insurance. We need consent for emergency surgery immediately. It was the first time I'd seen him in 2 years. He looked older, grayer. We sat in that waiting room for 4 hours. He bought me vending machine snacks and held my hand when I cried. Neither of us said it, but we both knew. Mom's hate almost killed her. After 8 hours, the doctor came out into the waiting room with tired eyes. Another hour without treatment could have been fatal. Only the emergency surgery saved her. I held Mom's hand while she was still unconscious. It felt so small. Dad stood in the doorway, afraid to come closer. Mom's first word when she woke up wasn't even my name. It was Pedro? Like she thought she was dreaming. The nurse chimed in. Your husband was incredible. He knew all your medications, your blood type, even that surgery you had 10 years ago. That information saved your life. Mom's face crumpled. He's not my... She stopped. Looked at Dad. Really looked at him for the first time in 2 years. Yeah, he is pretty great. That's when the doors burst open. A woman I didn't recognize ran in. Pedro, your location said hospital and you weren't picking up your phone and... She saw my dad holding my mom's hand and froze like a deer in headlights. Is this Isabella? She knew my name. The daughter you cry about every night? Dad went white. Lisa. And this is the ex who won't let you see her. Her voice cracked. My eyes glanced over to the huge engagement ring on her finger. Mom's monitors started beeping faster. The nurse rushed in and checked the monitors while pushing buttons on the machine that was making all the noise. She looked at the 3 of us standing around Mom's bed and her face got serious. I need everyone except immediate family to step outside, please. Lisa's mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but Dad touched her arm and shook his head. She grabbed her purse and walked out without looking back at any of us. The nurse adjusted Mom's IV and checked her blood pressure again before leaving us alone. Mom started crying then, but it wasn't the angry crying I was used to seeing when Dad came up. These were tired tears that just rolled down her face without her even trying to wipe them away. She looked at Dad, who was still standing by her bed. Are you really getting married? Dad just nodded without saying anything else or trying to explain why he hadn't told us. Mom turned to look at me and her voice was shaky. I'm sorry about your birthday letter. I was scared of losing you too. I squeezed her hand but told her I understood why she did it, but that didn't make it okay. She actually nodded and agreed with me instead of getting defensive like she usually did when I challenged her about anything. The doctor came in carrying a clipboard and started explaining Mom's recovery plan. She had internal injuries that would take at least 6 weeks to heal properly, and she'd need help at home with basic tasks. Mom's face went pale when she realized she couldn't do this alone. Dad cleared his throat and offered to help drive me to the school and activities since he lived 20 minutes away now. Mom stared at the ceiling for a long time before agreeing, but she had conditions. He had to text before coming over, no surprise visits, and absolutely no bringing Lisa to our house. Dad agreed immediately without even hesitating, like he was just grateful to be included at all. The pain medication finally kicked in, and Mom's eyes started closing. Dad and I went down to the hospital cafeteria to get real food for the first time since I'd gotten pulled out of history class. He bought us both sandwiches and chips, and we found a table in the corner away from other people. While we ate, he explained that Lisa hadn't meant to burst in like that. She'd gotten worried when he didn't answer his phone for hours and tracked his location to the hospital thinking something happened to him. I put my sandwich down and asked him straight up why he never fought harder to see me after the divorce. Why did he just accept Mom's rules without trying to change them? He rubbed his face with both hands before answering. His lawyer had told him that fighting in court would traumatize me more than the divorce already had. Now he wondered if that was the wrong choice. We threw away our trash and walked back to Mom's room. She was awake and looking around frantically when we walked in. Her whole body relaxed when she saw me with Dad. It was the first time in 2 years she hadn't looked angry at the sight of him. She'd woken up alone and panicked that we'd left her there. Dad pulled a chair closer to her bed and I sat on the other side holding her hand. That's when Grandma finally showed up, still wearing her book club name tag. She wasn't even surprised to see Dad sitting there. Mom's eyes got wide when Grandma walked over and hugged Dad first before coming to check on her. Turns out Grandma had been updating Dad about us for months through text messages and phone calls. Mom looked betrayed, but she was too tired and medicated to fight about it. Grandma just shrugged and said someone had to be the adult in this situation. The next morning, a social worker came to Mom's room with a bunch of forms. She needed to make sure Mom had adequate support at home before the hospital would discharge her. Mom had to admit that Dad would be helping with transportation and household tasks during her recovery. The social worker nodded and pulled out another paper. She suggested family counseling to help navigate this transition and gave us a list of therapists who worked specifically with divorced families going through reunification. Mom took the paper without arguing, which shocked both Dad and me. The social worker explained that the accident and recovery period could be an opportunity to establish healthier co-parenting patterns. She'd seen situations like ours before where a crisis forced families to work together. Dad asked if he could have a copy of the therapist list too, and the social worker printed him one. Mom watched him fold it carefully and put it in his wallet. Her face was hard to read, but she didn't look angry anymore. Just tired and maybe a little sad. The social worker left after making sure we understood all the discharge requirements and follow-up appointments Mom would need. Dad started making a list on his phone of all the dates and times so he could arrange his work schedule. Mom watched him typing and asked if Lisa would be okay with him spending so much time helping us. Dad said Lisa understood this was about me, and that came first. Mom closed her eyes and nodded slightly like she was accepting something she'd been fighting against for 2 years. 2 days later, the discharge nurse wheeled Mom out to the parking lot while I carried a plastic bag full of her medications and papers from the hospital. I wonder why Mom kept Dad listed as next of kin on her insurance after all that rage and cutting him off completely. That detail seems odd when she wouldn't even let him send birthday cards. Dad's car was already waiting by the curb and he jumped out to help Mom stand up from the wheelchair. She winced when she tried to lift herself and Dad caught her arm to steady her. The nurse showed him how to support her weight without hurting her ribs, and he nodded like he was memorizing every word. I climbed into the back seat with the medication bag while Dad helped Mom into the front passenger seat. He adjusted the seat back so she could lean without putting pressure on her stitches. The drive home took 20 minutes, and Mom stayed quiet except for little gasps when we hit bumps in the road. When we turned onto our street, Mom pointed at our driveway and told Dad to pull all the way in instead of parking on the street like he used to do before the divorce. Dad carried Mom's hospital bag while I unlocked the front door, and he helped her walk inside step by step. He knew exactly where to guide her to the couch, and remembered where she liked the throw pillows positioned behind her back. Mom sank into the cushions and closed her eyes while Dad checked the kitchen and found it basically empty except for some old cereal and expired milk. He offered to go grocery shopping and asked what she needed, but instead of refusing like I expected, Mom actually gave him a list. She told him where to find her grocery store loyalty card in her purse and which brand of bread to buy. While Dad was gone, Mom asked me to bring her phone from the kitchen counter where it had been charging. Her hands shook a little as she scrolled through her contacts and found Dad's blocked number. She stared at it for a long time before pressing the unblock button, and I heard her whisper that it was just for emergencies. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize, and when I opened it, I saw it was from Lisa apologizing for how she acted at the hospital. She said she was out of line and wanted to make things right between us, but I didn't know what to say to the woman who was marrying my dad, so I just left it on read. An hour later, Dad came back carrying 6 grocery bags, plus a gallon of mint chocolate chip ice cream. That definitely wasn't on Mom's list. Mom actually smiled a tiny bit when she saw the ice cream, because it was her favorite flavor, and Dad remembered even after 2 years. He put everything away in the exact spots where things had always gone, like the cereal on the second shelf and the pasta in the cabinet next to the stove. That night, I woke up to the sound of Mom crying in her bedroom, and I knocked softly before going in to check on her. She was sitting up in bed holding her side where the stitches were, and tears were running down her face. She admitted she was scared about being weak and not being able to take care of herself or me. I sat on the edge of her bed and reminded her that Dad literally saved her life by showing up at the hospital when we needed him. I told her maybe being vulnerable wasn't the worst thing in the world, and she could let people help her for once. She squeezed my hand and nodded, but I could tell she was still scared of losing control. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Dad, asking if it was okay to pick me up for school in 15 minutes. He was following Mom's rules perfectly by texting first instead of just showing up like he might have wanted to. Mom watched from the living room window as I got into Dad's car, and I noticed she wasn't hiding behind the curtain like she used to do when she thought I wasn't looking. The drive to the school was quiet except for Dad asking if I'd eaten breakfast and making sure I had lunch money. At the school, I tried to focus on my classes, but my guidance counselor pulled me out of third period math to check how I was handling everything. I sat in her office and suddenly started crying when I told her about Lisa and the engagement ring and how Dad had this whole other life now. She handed me tissues and suggested I might benefit from seeing a therapist who specialized in helping kids deal with divorce and family changes. She gave me a card with a therapist's number and said she could help set up the appointment if my parents agreed. After school, Dad was waiting in the pickup line and asked if I wanted to see his apartment before he took me home. I made him promise Lisa wouldn't be there, and he said she was at work until 6, so we'd have plenty of time. The drive to his apartment took about 20 minutes, and it was in a nice complex with a pool and a playground, even though there weren't many kids around. His apartment was on the second floor, and when he unlocked the door, I could smell coffee and something that reminded me of our old house. The living room was small but clean, with a couch and a TV and pictures on the coffee table, including one of me at my 6th grade graduation. He led me down a short hallway and opened a door to show me a bedroom painted in my favorite shade of purple, with a white desk and a bookshelf already filled with some books. The bed had a comforter with stars on it like the one I'd wanted for my birthday 2 years ago, but Mom said was too expensive. On the walls were pictures of us from before the divorce, including one from the beach trip where I caught my first fish, and another from when we built that terrible snowman. He'd been preparing this room for 2 years, just waiting and hoping that someday I'd be allowed to visit him again. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the room while Dad stood in the doorway watching me. The drive back home was quiet, and when we got there, Mom was still on the couch where we'd left her. I showed her the picture on my phone, expecting her face to get all tight and angry, but instead her eyes just got wet. "It's nice," she said real soft. "I always knew he'd never stop loving you, even when I made it impossible for him to show it." That made my chest feel weird and heavy. 3 days later, Mom and I went to our first therapy appointment together at this office building downtown. The therapist was this older woman with gray hair who had us sit on opposite ends of a couch. She asked Mom to talk about the accident and what happened after. Mom's hands kept twisting in her lap as she talked about being scared when she woke up and saw Pedro there. Then she said something that surprised me. I thought I was protecting Isabella from getting disappointed by him, but I think I was also punishing him through her. The therapist nodded and wrote something down while I stared at Mom. We talked for the whole hour about how the accident changed things, and how we both felt about Dad being back in our lives. A week later, I was doing homework at the kitchen table when Mom suddenly grabbed her stomach and ran to the bathroom. I heard her throwing up, and when she came out, her face was all sweaty and pale. She said her chest felt tight and her heart was racing weird. I called 911 and they sent an ambulance right away. The paramedics checked her vitals and said we needed to go to the emergency room because it looked like a bad reaction to one of her new medications. I texted Dad from the ambulance without even thinking about it. By the time they got Mom into a room at the hospital, Dad was already there in the waiting area. When the nurse said I could go back and see Mom, I asked if Dad could come too. Mom saw him walk in behind me, and instead of looking mad, she actually looked relieved. The emergency room doctor came in and examined Mom, then looked at all her medications. He said sometimes the pain meds and antibiotics could interact badly and make people really sick. He adjusted the doses and gave her something for the nausea. "You're lucky to have such a strong support system," he told Mom while looking at both Dad and me. Mom glanced at Dad and didn't correct the doctor about them not being married anymore, which felt like something had shifted again. We stayed at the hospital for 4 hours while they monitored Mom and made sure the new medication doses were working. Dad went and got us food from the cafeteria, and we all ate together in Mom's room. 2 days later, Grandma came over to check on Mom and offered to stay the night. "Why don't you let Pedro take Isabella to dinner?" she suggested. "They haven't had any real time together in 2 years. Mom tensed up on the couch, but then took a deep breath. "Okay, but Isabella needs to text me every hour so I know she's safe." I promised I would, and Dad picked me up at 6. We went to this Italian place we used to go to before the divorce. I texted Mom a picture of the menu right when we sat down. Dad ordered the same thing he always used to get, and I got my favorite pasta. While we waited for the food, he started telling me about Lisa. He said they met at this support group for divorced parents who couldn't see their kids.